Here's another video to add to the collection I already made about modern day speaking in tongues, which is practiced by Pentecostals and Charismatics. If you haven't watched my previous videos on this subject, you can watch them on my playlist entitled Speaking in Tongues Deception. In this video, I want to talk about two dangers of modern day speaking in tongues. The first danger is believing that you are filled with the Holy Spirit and saved when you are not, and the second danger is believing that you don't have the Holy Spirit and are not saved because you haven't received the gift of tongues, when the gift of tongues really has nothing to do with that. Let me explain. About the devil using the modern day gift of tongues to deceive people they have the Holy Spirit and are saved when they are not. Pentecostals and Charismatics are ripe for this deception because once they receive the counterfeit gift of tongues, which is babbling incoherently, it is confirmation for them that they are right with God. This is an excellent way for the devil to cause people to be lost in their sins. They could be going along, living in unrepented sin, and then bam, the devil hits them with a false gift of tongues, and they believe they are on the right track. This is very dangerous, especially considering that one of the most important truths that God has revealed to us in these last days is the importance of keeping the seventh-day Sabbath holy, which is Saturday, to avoid receiving the mark of the beast. Pentecostals and Charismatics don't believe in keeping the Sabbath holy, and that makes them an easy target for the devil. Why do I say this? Because they are breaking one of God's commandments, and obedience to God's law provides us with physical and spiritual protection. You could read Deuteronomy chapter 28 for some of the blessings associated with obedience. But what happens to the Lord's hedge of protection when we disobey Him? Ecclesiastes chapter 10 verse 8 puts it this way: "Whoso breaketh an hedge, a serpent shall bite him." When we disobey God, we leave ourselves vulnerable to the attacks of the devil. And it doesn't matter if we break all of the commandments or just one. The one that tells us to keep the seventh-day Sabbath holy, because James chapter 2 verse 10 tells us, "For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all." To put this into perspective, Pentecostals and Charismatics are disobeying a commandment of God and therefore breaking their hedge of protection from God. This gives the devil an avenue through which he can attack them, and he hits them with a counterfeit gift of tongues in order to confirm them in their sinful course, which will lead them to being lost. This is a masterful deception of the enemy. Now, about how the devil uses the counterfeit gift of tongues in Pentecostal and Charismatic circles to cause people to doubt their salvation. It is often claimed that speaking in tongues is evidence that you have the Holy Spirit and are saved, and that everyone who has been saved will receive the gift of tongues. However, that's not biblical. For example, Jesus was saved and he never spoke in tongues. Not to mention 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verses 8 through 11, in speaking about the gift of tongues and other gifts of the Spirit, makes it clear that tongues is not for everyone. It says, "For to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another the gifts of healing by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another diverse kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But all these worketh that one and the selfsame Spirit, dividing to every man severally as he will." To one is given tongues, to one isn't. Not everyone receives the gift of tongues. The real evidence that someone has the Holy Spirit is the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians chapter 5 verses 22 through 26 tells us what the fruit of the Spirit is, saying, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another." Notice I highlighted, "Against such there is no law." I did that because I know someone is going to comment, if you're walking in the Spirit, you don't have to keep the law. That's nonsense. What that really means is, there is no law forbidding you to do good, because the purpose of the law is to point out that which is bad, to point out sin. Modern day speaking in tongues, which is practiced by Pentecostals and Charismatics, is a very dangerous diabolical deception. It not only has the potential of confirming those who receive it in a sinful course, it also may lead those who don't receive it to doubt their salvation. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it. That would help me out a lot. Subscribe if you're new. Check out some of my past videos on my channel page, and like me on Facebook as well. I share more content there. God bless.